pod. We did this last year, so thanks to those of you who were here last year. For those of you listening at home, we are broadcasting from Baseball HQ's First Pitch, Arizona. It's the 24th year of this conference, and we talked about it a lot throughout the year. It is the best baseball trip of the year, and I think everybody in the room would probably nod along or maybe be really loud. There's like 1,000 people in here right now. The mic started clipping because it was so loud. But it is really one of the best trips of the year. We got a special four-man podcast today. We got Todd Zola, James Anderson, and Clay Link joining me. I'm Derek VanRiper. We run the podcast about once a week during the off-season. During the season, we're on 5 days a week. We also have Jeff Erickson, Scott Jenstead on with us as well, and Tim Heaney, who's in the room getting a video version of this podcast, joins me on Tuesdays each week during the season as well. So there's a lot going on this weekend especially. We're going to go to the Fall Stars game on Saturday. That's going to be awesome. A lot of us have already seen Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on this trip. One person at this table up here has already drafted Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on this trip with the 18th overall pick in the draft that just went down a couple hours ago, so we'll talk about that. The Steamer projections for 2019 went live on Fangraphs, so there's some really interesting numbers up there that we'll talk about, and we'll talk about other things that happened in the drafts as well. Clay and James actually sat next to each other in the draft earlier tonight. I believe James had the 12th overall pick, Clay drafted in the 13th spot. Todd and I were in the XFL keeper auction. We probably won't talk a lot about that because the team I built was total crap. Todd hates his team too. To start off though, I want to give Clay some major props. He had probably the best fantasy baseball season that anybody at RotoWire has ever had in 2018. Just completely dominant. And just before we dive into anything kind of forward-looking, what was the secret, Clay? Like, what was some of the common threads, either in terms of like roster construction of your teams this year? Were there any players you had in a few spots that just hit in a big way? Like, what was your kind of your main reasoning for how you put this together this year?
Well, thank you, by the way, Derek, and everybody else. It was a good year, by far my best ever. It was one good year out of like 15, so not getting a big head. But a lot of it was just having the same, kind of handful of players across the board. Blake Snell, Mike Clevenger, Blake Trinan were huge. Albies is obviously great for me. But I think more generally, just the drafts that I did really well in was not going pitching heavy in the first 3 rounds, like pretty much going hitter, and then pitchers in that 4 through 8 range. That's what I tried to do in this draft too. We'll see how it works out, but I was happy with the pitchers that were available in that range. So hopefully it works out. I finished 10th in this league last year, so I got some work to do.
So yeah, all the leagues you played in this draft last year was probably your worst league by far. Yeah. Everything else you did, you won or maybe were runner-up. At worst, it seemed like everywhere else.
Yeah, this was definitely my worst draft. Last year I had I went really hitting heavy early, and I ended up with like Alex Wood, Alex Reyes, Jeff Samardzija.
Yeah, I liked him too.
Yeah, throwing too many strikes, I guess. But yeah, this was one where I wanted to go more balanced and not go, with a different approach and go, hitting so heavy, because it's just so hard to hit on enough guys on the pitching side late to really make up ground if you go that route.
All right, so the draft these guys were just in, just to give you guys a rundown of what the first round looked like. I know the launch angle guys did a great job before us. They talked about it a little bit as well. So if you happen to be here for that pod too, sorry for repeating it, but it's a pretty interesting first round because there were no pitchers taking the first 15 picks. And if you played in the NFBC before, that doesn't happen. That's just not how it goes down. But the first round in their draft went Trout, Betts, Arenado. Ronald Acuna went 4th overall. Jose Ramirez was 5th. JD Martinez was 6th. Francisco Lindor was 7th. And then going to the back half, it was Christian Yelich at 8, Jose Altuve at 9, Alex Bregman at 10, Bryce Harper at 11, Trea Turner at 12, Manny Machado to Clay at 13, Paul Goldschmidt at 14, and Trevor Story at 15. I want to start with the Turner pick first, because speed, if you started doing your homework for next year, and you looked at any early draft boards, finding speed in the middle and late rounds is actually harder than usual. So you kind of have to find building blocks that run at least a little, and Turner's the kind of building block that runs a lot. James, when you look at Trea Turner, in a vacuum, you kind of just see him as a guy that maybe is more likely to return second or third round value because of the bags alone. It just gives you a lot more flexibility elsewhere. Like, what's your basis for liking him as a late first rounder right now?
I like him as a middle first rounder, and I wanted Alex Bregman there, but he went 2 spots before me. And one of my personal weaknesses is getting speed in the draft. Like, I've just noticed that over the past couple of years. Like, I'm always a little light on speed, and a guy like Trea Turner, to me, seems like someone that could be this year's Mookie Betts, where he has a bad year, falls into like the middle to late first round, and then everyone looks up in like April or May, and it's like, oh yeah, Trea Turner's awesome. Why didn't we take a little bit higher? I really just don't see like the floors for him, and like batting average and steals and runs are all just high enough where you can really dream on that ceiling. Like, if he hits 280, which I think is in play, and he steals 60 bases, which I think is in play, and he hits 18, 20 home runs, like, that's a guy that's going to finish top 5 for fantasy value. So knowing my own weaknesses when it comes to speed, I'm really attracted to high on base, high batting average guys, and I tagged a couple of those guys later in the draft. Just getting that stolen base kind of weight off of my shoulders in the first round was really cool.
Yeah, I've been aggressive with Turner in previous years, so if I'm in your shoes, I'm doing something very similar if he's still hanging around there. And it's definitely possible, because I think in a lot of other drafts you're going to see probably Scherzer, maybe one of or both of Sale or DeGrom maybe get jammed up into the first round before Turner goes too. Clay, you started with Manny Machado at 13. I was a little surprised by that. We don't know where he's going to play, which I don't think it matters. He's a great player. Why Machado at 13, though? Why not Scherzer?
You know, I was telling James, like, I don't like Machado as a person at all, but he's just so good offensively and steady. I know there's something to players going to a new location and struggling. There's a long history of that. Colton, the Wolfman, always talking about that, and he makes some good points.
Yeah, J.D. Martinez.
That's true, yeah. Obviously, there are exceptions, and I think Machado will be an exception too. I mean, he's just so steady, high average, a lot of power, and also ran some this year, 14 steals, 162 games. I just think the volume there makes him too hard to pass up. And again, I was wanting to avoid pitching the first 3 rounds if I could, just load up that offensive base, because like James was saying, like, you figure out your tendencies as a player, and your strengths and weaknesses as a player. And I think one of the strengths of mine is just finding pitching values in the later portion of the draft. So I wanted to build that base up, and I thought Machado was a perfect pick there.
Yeah, I mean, does at least a little bit of everything. Even had 14 steals this year. Over 30 homers in 3 years in a row now. Rarely misses time. Extremely durable. So plenty to like there. But I just think like late first round, if I don't find a lot of speed, it's really tempting to get a pitcher if one of those big 3 are still hanging there. Todd, I want to start with Ronald Acuna at 4 with you. I mean, are you, with your projections, are you even considering Acuna in the first half of the first round? It's not ridiculous he's in the first round, but does he belong ahead of Jose Ramirez, ahead of J.D. Martinez, ahead of Francisco Lindor, ahead of guys that have done it for a few years? And especially a guy like Jose Ramirez, who, like Acuna, does contribute a lot in every single category.
Acuna hasn't even done it for 1 year. Part of my problem was he got hurt this year. We don't even know if he can make it over a whole season. So numbers-wise, per plate appearance, yeah, he's probably a top pick, but I think, second or third round, if that means I don't have any Ronald Acuna Jr., that means I don't have any Acuna. But to me, he needs to show that he can stay healthy for a full season, and he hasn't done that yet. And if he, I lose out on him. I have Juan Soto ranked higher than I do Acuna. So I think first round is. Does he have that in him? Yeah, but guys are passing on those names. I mean, some of the guys you're passing on, even guys you didn't even name yet, I prefer over Acuna. So, and real quick, a comment about the pitching. You need to keep in mind where we are. We're not in Vegas. We're not in New York. We're not in Chicago. What's HQ? Their mantra, not so much mantra, but their way of playing is not to take pitching. So I'm not at all surprised that's no light league. I'm not at all surprised that the pitching fell. So what you think you go with the flow and you just draft better than they do, knowing you're drafting pitching, or you take advantage and you draft the pitching early. You kill it. So it's an interesting dynamic. But those listening, keep in mind that the HQ, there's some NFBC can here, but in general, an HQ crowd is more of the weight on pitching group.
I mentioned before, the steamer projections just went up on FanGraphs. Ronald Acuna has a steamer projection for 2019 where he's got a 278 average, a 346 on base percentage, and a 488 slugging percentage. That's with 28 homers, 25 steals, over 150 games. Just by comparison, he played 111 games as a rookie this year, hit 293, so he actually hit 15 points above his 2019 projection. Hit 26 homers, even though it was only 111 games, and was 16 for 21 as a base stealer, so very efficient. I mean, you can scale that up and you would get more power if you maintain that over a full season. James, do you see that steamer projection as being a fair baseline for Acuna, and do you think he belongs in the first part of the first round?
Yeah, if I had the third pick, I would take Francisco Lindor. If I had the fourth pick, I would take Ronald Acuna if Lindor was off the board. I think that he went through the first adjustment phase of his entire career last year against big league pitching. Like, that was the first time he'd ever struggled, and it was like a 2.5 week adjustment period where he just was not hitting very well at all. And few guys are gifted with his type of swing and his type of control of the barrel in the zone, and he's just able to do stuff that a lot of people can't with his aggressive approach. And I think that there's, like, my comp for him from a production standpoint is young Hanley Ramirez, where I think there's going to be a 30-30 season in there. I think there's going to be a season where he hits above 300 and does 30-30, might do that multiple times. He's just a really, really special player, and when I'm picking early in the draft like that, if I can tag all 5 roto categories and really get a leg up in my mind. Like 278 for steamer, I get it because of the strikeout rate and everything like that, but you have to remember how old this guy is. He's going to be 21 next year. I mean, I would be surprised if he hit below 280 over a full season. I'd be surprised if he hit. I'd honestly be surprised if he didn't hit 30 home runs if he stays healthy. The stolen bases, it's up for debate because the Braves are going to be competitive, and he's not that efficient on the bases to where I would just give him the constant green light. But I think 20 stolen bases is perfectly within reason. I think 30, like if he has one of those years where he's just on base at a 36% clip, I think 37 bases is in play. So yeah, I wasn't surprised at all that he went there. I would take him there. I think there's a chance he finishes the year as the number 1 overall player, and I would only say that about a couple guys.
And Clay's been nodding along through most of that. I mean, I assume you're kind of in the same place then, Clay?
Yeah, I had some rankings go up on the site this week, and it was really just an exercise prepping for this draft, and just wanted to get someone out there. And I had Acuna ranked 5th, and I mean, you can't necessarily prorate what he did over, in his sample over the course of a full season, but I think the baseline for him is just so high. James said he'd take him 4th. I had JD Martinez 4th, and then Acuna 5th. So I think he's very much in that range. I mean, you can justify Arenado, Yelich, a number of guys over him, but I just think the five category production he gives you is just so rare. And as James said, he could be the number 1 overall guy, and this may be. I mean, we could be looking at him as like the number 1 or number 2 guy for the next 5 years. So. Perfectly fine taking a chance on him really at any point in the first round.
Now, I know there's one general theme that I've already heard about early drafts this year, and that the first few rounds are just stacked. There's a lot of hitters that you really like, guys that have either been first rounders before, they've been close to it, or they project to someday be that kind of player. Todd, is somebody who might be a lot more risk averse early than Clay and James are, would you be more willing to take chances this year, knowing that Anthony Rizzo falls to the 2-3 turn, or that Aaron Judge might be there in the early part of round 2? I think he's more stable than we give him credit for. Freddie Freeman is a second rounder right now. Does those guys slipping in most rooms make you more willing to take a shot than you would have been in previous years?
No, it makes me less. Because there's so many, if I can build a safer foundation like drop 3, I'll take my chances later. So I think it makes me, especially if other people are taking the Acuñas and a little bit riskier players early and pushing even safer players down on me. No, I still believe in building the foundation early and throwing the darts a little bit later.
So Paul Goldschmidt went 14th overall, and I think in the launch engine pod that was recording before us, that was the guy that they both agreed on that doesn't really belong in the first round anymore. You got to a really slow start, and Humidor Chase Field had pretty much its expected impact as we saw over the course of the year, but from about mid-May on, Goldschmidt was pretty close to the typical Goldschmidt. Do you think, Todd, that Paul Goldschmidt still belongs as a first rounder, as a top 15 overall player?
No, but not probably for different reasons. I think he's not going to steal enough anymore. I don't think he's going to get the ample steals, because part of you got Tatum Martinez and you got Arenado. Other than that, everybody's stealing more than Goldschmidt will. At least you can't count on it. So what made him so special was the 20 steals, and now 17, and then 15 and 13. He needs 15 to 20 steals, and I'm not sure he's going to get it. I'm not as concerned about the power and batting average. The Humidor did its thing. He's not going to have as great of a road year as he had in the next year, but he's still going to be a very solid player. But he's not going to give you even the modicum of steal. He's not going to have quite the impact that Martinez is going to have and Arenado is going to have in the other counting categories.
Let's talk about the early pitching. So coming back through in round 2, Jacob deGrom was the first pick in the second round, 16th overall. Max Scherzer goes 17th. Corey Kluber goes 21st overall. That was the big 3 in this case. I believe Clayton Kershaw fell to the later part of round 3. Chris Sale fell a little further in the second round here. Looks like he went to the 17th coming back through. So the big 4 now has Jacob deGrom in it instead of Clayton Kershaw. deGrom absolutely had a monster season in 2018. If he won a normal number of games, he would have easily been the most valuable pitcher from a dollars earned standpoint. Do you guys have any issues with deGrom being the first pitcher off the board? If you were the team taking the first pitcher off the board, would he be your choice? We'll start with you, Clay.
I have Scherzer one spot ahead of him, but it's a toss-up for me. I think both guys are excellent. The wins obviously fluky, but for 5x5 roto, they matter, and I don't think the Mets are going to be a whole lot better next year. We'll see if they're able to preserve some leads for deGrom. I think they probably will, but those two are pretty much a coin flip for me. But after those guys, I actually have, I know Todd recently published his e-files on the site. He's not worried about Sale. I'm a little worried about Sale. So my 2-3 are actually Verlander and Snell. I think, a lot of guys in that same range are viable picks, but I think it's interesting that beyond those first two, deGrom and Scherzer, that there's some fluctuation, and I think it'll be interesting to see kind of how that ADP settles come draft season.
Yeah, Aaron Nola, Justin Verlander, and Garrett Cole are the 3 starters that happen to go before the end of round 2 in this particular draft. How about you, James? If you're taking the first pitcher off the board, if you have your choice of all the starters out there, who are you taking?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I'm not going to be the first person to take a pitcher off the board, but it's Scherzer for me, and then there's a bit of a gap. I don't see much distinction between Jacob deGrom, Chris Sale, Blake Snell. Corey Kluber would not be in my top 4. I don't see a ton of upside there from what I think he peaked 2 years ago. Blake Snell to me is a guy that I could see finishing the year as the #1 overall pitcher, so he would be in that mix for me for sure. But I think the fact that there's a big disconnect, I think it's probably going to settle out where it's Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom, and maybe Chris Sale if we can get some better news on his health as the top 3 guys. But I think the fact that there's a big disconnect after that is just going to lead to just massive pitcher runs in the second round of every draft, where everyone's got their guy. Everyone's going to be like, oh, is this guy going to follow me? Like, oh, pop him. And I'm really not that interested in that, especially when you look at some of the guys that went off the board in round 3 here. Like, I mean, Blake Snell went in the 3rd round. Clinton Kershaw went in the 3rd round. I don't see a big gap between either of those guys and Jacob deGrom, especially when you factor in team context. So I'm not going to be the guy that takes the first pitcher. If I am, it's going to go back Scherzer. But after that, I think there's a lot that's kind of up in the air right now.
Yeah, Todd and I had a pick. We were 6th overall in that draft that we did a few weeks ago.
Yep.
We took Scherzer in that spot, and that's even looking at a guy who's 34 years old, who's looking more like an outlier in terms of what he's accomplished in his career. And there's risk in having a pitcher that old, but I don't think it's really that significant at this point. I think what we found is coming back through in rounds 2 and 3 and 4, we were still getting hitters we liked just as much as some of the guys we were thinking about taking if we passed on Scherzer, whereas the pitchers coming back through late round 2, early round 3, especially end of round 4 when it comes all the way back around, that's a pretty big drop-off. The early round pitching is kind of quirky this year, where you have a few guys that have been significantly injured. You've got some guys that have only done it for a really small number of innings, and I think it's kind of go really early or wait a little bit. James did that, like in the draft tonight. I mean, from that 12th seed, you didn't take a pitcher until the 5th round. You took Jamison Tyon to anchor your staff. I think more surprisingly, you took 5 more hitters after Tyon before you started adding to that rotation. So you went Tyon in the 5th, Tyler Glasnow down to be in the 11th, and Kevin Gossman in the 12th as your first 3. You kept loading up after that. You took 4 more pitchers from there. Did you come away happy with that build? Clearly there was some thought put into doing that ahead of time. I mean, did it kind of turn out the way you hoped?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I love Jamison Tyon. I think I would have taken him ahead of at least a half dozen starting pitchers that went ahead of him in that draft. I think Jamison Tyon's going to be this year's guy that wins a lot of people's leagues, where he's going to go outside of the top 4 rounds and finish as a borderline top 10 fantasy starter. I really believe in the skills. If he gets to 200 innings, I'm going to love that. And then it just kind of, there were a handful of guys where I was like, oh, this guy might fall to me. Like I wanted Shane Bieber to fall to me. I wanted John Gray to fall to me. I wanted Kyle Hendricks to fall to me. And like there were just a lot of guys that I was like, I'll get this guy a little bit later, because I just loved the hitting that I was popping in rounds 5 through 9 or 5 through 10. And in a league like this, I think it's very league specific, right? Like if we're only drafting, like a standard, less than 30 player type of draft, I'm probably going to have to get in there on the pitching, but I know that I'm going to roster 50 players, and I'm going to cycle a ton of pitching in and out. And I think that the way baseball is kind of moving to where there's just so much part-time jobs going on in terms of pitching, hitting, like everyone's getting platooned, everyone's getting pulled after the 5th inning. Like I just love the idea of getting those stud hitters that I know are going to play every day, and I just love building that batting average and counting stats base. So I know a lot of people are going to look at my draft and just laugh at the pitching, but I think I'm going to win batting average. I think I'm going to win RBIs. I think I'm going to win runs, and I think I'm like one of my better strengths, like Clay was alluding to earlier, is just like I trust myself to be able to find pitching pretty late, and the guys that I was able to tag late, the guys I'm going to tag once we get into the slow draft portion of this, I have a lot of faith that they're going to produce. So that was the strength.
And Clay took a slightly different approach. No pitchers in the first 3 rounds. It was a Machado, Vlad Jr., Adalberto Mondesi base for the first 3 rounds. We'll talk about Vlad Jr. and Mondesi in just a second. 3 pitchers in a row, 4 through 6. Zach Greinke, Germán Marquez, and Jack Flaherty. And I think everybody who drafts Greinke feels a little bit uneasy doing it, even though he tends to just return value. Like he does it. He's crafty, he's finesse, he gets in the innings. Whatever he lacks in dominance, he makes up for in just getting out there, getting a ton of innings, and piling up a lot of Ks and good ratios along the way. You kind of offset that I don't know, boring feel of Greinke with Marquez and Flaherty. Marquez in the fifth and Kyle Freeland and somebody else in the fifth were two of the bigger surprises to me, just because it's jarring to see Coors pitchers going that early.
Yeah, there were two going in that round.
Yeah, and Marquez was
Freeland.
awesome. Like, there's no doubt about that. What gives you confidence that Marquez can repeat or come close to repeating what he was doing, throughout the last 4 months or so of this 2018 season?
Well, it's talked about a lot that it's really tough for a new pitcher to beat Coors. Todd's mentioned a lot that the inflation at Coors is just hard to overcome. But Marquez in the second half had the fourth best K-minus walk percentage among qualified starters. I just think the stuff was legit, and I think he's a guy that in that range you can gamble on. Maybe it doesn't pan out, but I think he was so dominant late in the year that you could take that chance. Greinke was, I didn't love that pick. I was kind of like, I guess I'll take Greinke. But I was fading him this year, and he was just steady again. He's just consistent ratio guy, and I think he'll rack up a good number of wins. I think I bought in too much last season to the last spring to the dip in velo. I just think he's got a few more good years left. Solid guy in the fourth round. Jack Flaherty, 4 pitches with above average swing and miss rate. He's pretty much the ace of staff already in the same year.
That's the pick of yours I love.
Nice. Glad to hear that.
The only
No, seriously.
Yeah, the only one. That's
Flaherty has crazy upside.
Yeah.
If you're looking at
he was great.
pitchers that aren't always going to go